And Elizabeth is here. Okay, we have a quorum. Thank you, Bill. I got the thing we're recorded. Okay. So let's call the meeting to order, 6:02, 6:03, whatever it is, okay? On Thursday, March 12th, 2020, Governor Baker issued an order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, general laws, chapter 30A, section 20. That order was effective immediately until it is rescinded or the state of emergency is terminated. That's why this meeting can have remote participation. Okay, we have a bunch of minutes to approve, and then we have the review of the draft of the FY23 county budget. Since we have a quorum, even without you, Joe, let's dive right into the budget. So you're here for that discussion.
Okay, thank you.
Because we could do the minutes, the three of us, if we have to. Okay. All right. John, I think you're up, right?
Sure.
All right. Thank you.
So, real briefly, I spoke to Chairman Reardon yesterday about preparatory documents for this discussion, and he thought that because all of you have already seen and received the documents that the departments have submitted on behalf of their request for FY23, there wasn't any point in sending something to you. We have it. So this evening, So this evening, what I want to do this evening is take a like 1,000-foot run through what we've received, discuss our revenue picture that matches that, and as we proceed, I'll ask Bill or Michelle, both of them are on here today, to pull up relevant documents. So this is this evening's agenda. I'm going to briefly talk about the budget schedule, followed by the process that we're going through with our consultant. We'll talk then about the budget itself. I've broken out some highlights in bullets, as you can see on the agenda, to help guide you as to really what's pulsing within the requests in the departments. So briefly, I think you all understand by now, our upcoming budget calendar has been pretty much set. With this evening's meeting, it sort of commences the draft budget review. A week from today, the commissioners will open up a public hearing on the FY23 budget. That hearing will open and will be continued until May 4th. The commissioners revised the budget schedule last week because they want to have the opportunity to receive the Ripples Group report, which is due in late April, to understand any impacts it may have on any decisions for that budget. So next week, I plan to give the commissioners sort of a buffed up view of what you're going to see tonight, which is very, very preliminary. They will not take any votes on this proposed budget next week, but the following week, which is April 6th, we will be meeting again, the Finance Committee and myself, to take another pass at how things are trending. I want to tell you, I really welcome your feedback. I'm thoroughly impressed working with members of the Finance Committee and the Advisory Board on their knowledge of our budget and what makes it tick. So input is obviously welcome. And I really want to thank you in advance for any of those recommendations, because as you can see, we have a substantial deficiency. There's a lot of ways to take care of that deficiency, and I think collaboration is the best approach. The budget development schedule after April 6th includes an April 13th advisory board meeting, and I think, Joe, you will similarly open up that hearing and continue it until May. Again, the Ripples Group will come in late April. So by May 4th, the commissioners are assessing the Ripples Group, taking a vote on the budget. May 11th, you're scheduled for a Finance Committee meeting, followed by a May 18th advisory board meeting to wrap things up. I'm not asking for a decision now, but the chairman and I spoke yesterday about a potential scheduling conflict with the chairwoman and her May 18th date. I believe she's got a family commitment, and I recommended perhaps moving the May 18th advisory board meeting to May 11th with the Finance Committee. That's your call. I'm just putting it out there. If you're interested in doing that kind of a change, just let us know and we'll advance the schedule. Okay.
Wouldn't think you're having a meeting without Liz.
I'll just share with you guys that May 18th is my son's graduation from the Coast Guard Academy.
Oh yeah,
Congratulations.
And I can't do it that night because of that. So and
with you.
Unfortunately, the whole process for the graduation starts actually on Friday, May 13th, because there's a whole lead up to it. So the only thing that would really work would be to do it the week before, I think. Otherwise, we're pushing it way too late, I think. So I'm
Which
so
is
sorry
fine.
about that, but that's why the question has been brought up about changing it, and so I can be there on the 11th.
You want to make it formal?
Well, I think Joe, you have to really, it has to work for you.
No, it works for me, just as long as you're good. We can
Yeah.
easily change that schedule. That's not a problem.
Well, I can do the 11th, and I think that's what we should, I mean, from my perspective, that would allow me to be there. We could do, and we'd have to meet the finance committee before the whole advisory boards. We might have to meet a little earlier. Because we might have to discuss stuff, but then it's a little, we're condensing it a little bit, but we could probably do it. I think all of us.
We can get
Does
it
that-
done.
That's fine.
Yeah. Eric,
Well,
Paul,
so-
you feel okay with that?
I'm
I'm
all right
good.
with it.
Okay, so hearing that, I will
Yeah.
make the change and send it back out to the department heads and all
Right.
interested parties. It's hopefully the last change in the budget schedule, but I think it makes sense. So thanks for
Right.
doing that.
So wait a minute, just to clarify, we're talking about Wednesday, May 11th at 6 PM?
Well,
I-
I think the finance committee, we might have to meet as early as, I don't know, John, what do you think, like 4:30?
I would say 4 o'clock.
4
o'clock,
o'clock, okay. Yeah, so that, it's gonna be a long night for the finance committee, because we'll
Right.
have to do our stuff, then we'll have to do the whole advisory board thing.
Okay, so
Okay.
4
So-
o'clock for the FinCom, 6 o'clock for the AB on the 4th. Got it.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah.
Before I get going, I just want to let you know Chairman Shea from the Norfolk County Commissioners is joining me here in Dedham. And I believe Commissioner Collins has logged on to
Yeah.
observe. We're not posted for this meeting, so he's just observing. They're all observing. They're not collaborating. Now, just getting into the budget, if I could ask Bill to pull up the budget document that was sent earlier. Stand by. So you're going to see an Excel spreadsheet. The format should look pretty familiar. We have used this in the past. The consultant that we're using has replicated the file that you have customarily seen, but as you probably also know, that product is going to be migrating to Infinite Visions starting this year. So to begin the process, we're going to use Excel to duplicate the forms and the data that we're producing for this document. But by the end, hopefully by May, you're looking at something that looks very different. And I'm also going to give a plug to Bill Buckley, who has found a really, really cheap software that's going to take our budget when it's done and create what's called a flip book that makes it into a PDF that could be easily read like you would a document on, your Kindle or something. It's a neat way to kind of present the document in a readable format, so you don't have to be familiar with Excel to navigate it. What I wanted to start with was this overall view of revenue, but revenue drives the budget. So as I built the revenue model for FY23, I took a conservative approach. And as you can see, the numbers at the top are traditional general county revenues. I look back at, as you're supposed to, on revenue collections, the trends that are involved with these. We should be informed of any pitfalls that we envision that may be associated with revenue. In this case, I think we all know that the increased interest rates may have an effect on registry activity in FY23. We're coming off an historical level of collections ending FY21. So I think we can naturally expect some amount of leveling. Nevertheless, I do see a path towards increasing revenue to 2.75 on the registry transaction fees. And similarly, a small increase in the recreational receipts that are reflective of the new rates that the commissioners voted on for Walston Golf Course. As you proceed, you'll note there's been some decreases. The court rental went down a little bit because, as you probably know, our rentals are a year in arrears. And this is capturing the FY20 period when there wasn't a lot of activity relative to repairs, upgrades, and so forth at the courts. So our number went down about $100,000 or so. The remaining revenues all look relatively static. I do show a deeds excise increase based on the trial. I was informed by the trial balance report by the end of December 31st of 2021 to progress where we're heading with deeds excise. Similarly for the dedicated deeds excise MOE with the Sheriff's Department. One item I would like to call your attention to is the Computer Access Fund. It's also known as the online fee. Bill, if you could pull up the file that has the historical nature of this particular account. I just wanted to call attention to the Finance Committee. This particular account, it's a concern of mine because it has the look to show that over the last several years, this account was created approximately, I think it was around 2007, and it had a tremendous amount of revenue initially being deposited into it, but it seemed to crest somewhere around 2013, 2014. Bill, if you'd be so kind as to make that over 50 viewing pleasure friendly. There we go. Oh, you're gonna have a little. Now you got to work your magic.
A little more.
Well, you're gonna have to increase the margins too, I'm afraid, so we can get a better view. Bill, do you know how to? Okay. Do you know how to adjust those margins, Bill, so that those numbers can be seen?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, just there you go. Thanks. So as he's doing this, I wanted the Finance Committee to see this particular file, which was provided to me by our Assistant Treasurer, Joe Doria. Again, the data goes back to 2007. This is a fee paid. This is a fee paid by individuals who seek transactions through the registry's online system. The revenue seems to have peaked in 2013 at $861,140, and since then it has seen a decline. In FY23, I'm projecting $200,000. It's a dramatic decrease. During the registrar's presentation of his budget to the commissioners, the questions were asked about what happened to this particular revenue. Why do we see such a decrease? And from what we're able to understand, the transaction incurred typically has what's called a watermark on the viewing product. And the watermark can sometimes impede banks from accepting the document as a certifiable evidence of a transaction. We're told now that the watermark is a relatively small, inconspicuous watermark on the document that banks find appealing, and they're now processing. The register went on to add that a lot of people aren't using the paper anymore. He had some reasons that the transactions associated with this fee are just not being embraced any longer. Nevertheless, from a financial perspective, I have to say the precipitous drop in this revenue causes alarm, because a short while ago, when we're looking, say, for example, in FY19, we had nearly $600,000 in revenue that we were booking expenses against, expenses associated with the base operations of the county. And I'm projecting for FY23, 4 years later, that a third of that revenue will be available. So in effect, we've seen a diminished capacity to sustain those base operations without any corresponding budget cuts. So structurally, I hate to use that word because I know it's an issue that came up last year. This is a concern. The loss of this type of revenue this fast is a big red flag. And I call attention only because it drives a significant portion of our budget. If I could move on and go back to the revenue page, Bill, the revenue thus moves on to show, as you probably know, dedicated deeds revenue that will come from the registry in FY23, as well as the appropriation for the agricultural school and the revenues that they collect. As of today, based on the revenues that I've generated estimates for, against the sum of requests from the departments that you all have heard to date, we're tracking a $933,665 deficiency. Not unexpected. Requests always exceed available resources, but yet it's a significant number that I am going to work towards eliminating over the next week or two. Moving back to the agenda, I hate to bounce around, Bill. I know that's hectic, but in the interest of time, I'm just going to keep going with the narrative. And if you want to ask questions at the end, because I know we're going to lose one of your members, I'll be happy to do that. The budget highlights, I've added certain highlights for the interest of time for your benefit. Starting in miscellaneous, overall, we're seeing some increase in our healthcare costs. They're growing by 3%. The Mayflower Municipal Healthcare Group announced that increase, and it costs just over $244,000. Our county retirement contribution is increasing by just about $200,000, $195,000. Our workers' comp insurance is increasing by $87,000. That's a number I'm going to talk about in just a minute when we get to facilities. And then finally, it also includes a projected salary reserve of about $225,000. As members of the Finance Committee know, the county is currently poised to begin negotiations with its 3 collective bargaining units. We expect some impact from those negotiations to be felt in FY23. This reserve will cover any of those projected costs. The Wollaston Golf Course in their presentation had modest increases, including increases to the temp salaries budget. Those are associated with minimum wage increases. They also put forth some land improvements. This is an $80,000 ask, a $15,000 ask for cedar fence repair, and finally benches. I know Eric Beckerman is already looking at this saying, why can't that be capital? And I don't disagree. So I will look forward to moving that money somewhere, likely the capital fund when I'm done with this exercise. But I can make an argument that the 80,000 should be operational. We'll see how the balance sheet treats that argument. On the commissioner side, we are obviously dropping the veteran service officer program salaries. Dale Kurtz and his assistant are no longer full-time employees. Dale runs the veteran service program through a contract because he's now retired. He services, as you know, a couple of towns here in Norfolk County. The correction to the professional staff in the commissioner's office, the available salaries as a result of that exercise have allowed us to perform what I call reclassification studies. Several folks here in the office have approached me since I started to discuss their salaries, their incomes. And in my experience, the proper way to do it is to review the classification of the individual through active comparative salaries in similar public organizations. If you are a budget director, for example, and you feel as though you're underpaid, you cannot comp yourself to a budget director who works for Moderna or Gillette. You have to comp yourself to a public institution that has a budget of approximately $30 to $35 million. So as a result of doing these studies, we've seen some people who found that their compensation was fair and equitable, and others that weren't. The one that jumped off the page that's presented in this budget is our HR director. Given her experience and her salary, we're bringing that up, as you probably saw in the presentation, to $100,000. In addition, we're going to bring on a new hire that was recommended by the Abrahams Group. It's an HR specialist. This position allows for a couple of things. Number one, professional redundancy. And number two, it provides the commissioner's office with a greater capacity to handle a centralized HR function that I think will be featured once the handbook is rewritten and the departments understand the role of a centralized professional HR department. So that position is funded, as well as the classification study salary increases. Technology, by the way, I'm going to rename that in the budget for FY23. It's currently called data processing. So you'll see technology come in as a mention, just to update the tag, that's all. But we're keeping the status quo, again, awaiting the Ripples Group recommendation in late April. The Treasurer's Office has basically a zero-based budget. They had a couple of increases, but some savings to offset it. He's looking to bring legal services into his base budget. Several members of the Finance Committee may remember that the Treasurer did have a supplemental draw in FY22 to support legal services. He'd like to keep that funding in his base going forward. It's equitable to the other elected office legal services base at the registry. So it's something that I think we should probably look to sustain. It's offset obviously by things including a drop in temp salaries for FY23. Facilities Department, they have embraced the recommendation that I made to them to send their staff to OSHA training. Our engineering department does OSHA training. It's critical to helping workers understand safe operating procedures as they conduct their business. We have seen over the years, after going through the workers' comp bills, a fair amount of our facility staff incur on-the-job injuries of a variety of different types. OSHA training will really benefit, I think, downstream our ability to, number one, keep our employees safe, and number two, guide them on safe activities in the workplace. One incident I can explain to you involved emptying a trash basket. Many of us probably wouldn't think twice about it, but as a custodian moves through a building, sometimes the trash basket isn't quite full, and you might want to reach in and grab a couple of papers and scoot them into the larger barrel. Unfortunately, when one of our staff did that this past year, they were struck by a hypodermic needle that had somehow found its way into our courthouse. And consequently, the employee had to undergo some treatment, which was quite nerve-wracking. But while we don't blame the employee, I think it was a harmless act in one sense. OSHA does provide you with the rethinking skills to look at actions like that to find out, can I do things smarter and safer? The facilities department budget includes the overtime to cover the shifts when these workers go out for this training, because it is out of the office, and obviously the $14,000 cost for the training itself. We are also going to show currently in the budget, we show it to you in a second, we have temp salaries in the facilities budget. That is a bit of a juggling act because the temp salaries are technically not permanent. They are not permanent slots, and therefore we can't show that an individual rests within a vacant position that may be a senior building custodian, because that slot is eligible for bidding rights. So we're just trying to show the salaries for the purposes of reporting it. But I spoke to the commissioners today about addressing the temporary status of these workers to see if we can't resolve where they're heading if we're not going to be doing a consolidation with the agricultural school, and perhaps have that resolved for fiscal year 23 as of July 1. And they also, of course, indicated in their budget they're projecting some increases in utilities. Natural gas and gasoline are going up, as everyone knows, so they're covering those costs. Engineering is adding a new survey crew chief. It was recommended by the Abrahams Group, as you probably remember from the survey, that the engineering division of the Commissioner's Office, or Norfolk County Commissioners, is a very, very popular service. We're trying to build capacity. We hired a new survey crew chief this year, and Patrick Higgins would like to replicate that and bring on another hire next year. Now, the dynamic of this additional hire is important because it's sensible. The additional hire in FY23 will allow the crews to go out in pairs, which is a preferred safety action. And furthermore, it's only a net increase of $14,000 because many of you may remember there was $115,000 salary reserve in that budget for FY22. We used a portion of it for this new salary in FY22. The balance of that base plus the $14,000 will cover this new hire. The agricultural school, as you know, they have produced a new tuition model that has generated new revenue. And as a result, it's creating a reserve of $360,885. This sum of money is relief to many of us who can now count on the agricultural school to sustain its own operating costs. The county contribution will remain at 2.5% for FY23. I'm getting a great sense working with the new superintendent as well as the new business manager that the increased revenue will give them the flexibility to handle all of their projected costs for FY23. And that includes projected collective bargaining costs. The Registry of Deeds requested 4 new positions. During his presentation, the registrar highlighted 3 of them. They were lower level staff positions, and the justification was he wanted to create promotional opportunity. Sorry, bounced out there, Bill. Thank you. He wanted to create a promotional opportunity or a step lane for new hires. Those new hires are also in competition with vacancies that we observe within that budget for individuals that have not been backfilled in at least since fiscal year 21. Overall, the budgeting for the Registry of Deeds increased by approximately $356,000. Finally, as I mentioned, the revenue piece, I modestly increased it where I could by approximately 2.5%. In some areas, it went higher based on historical trends. The indirect calculations have been completed and shared with the Registry of Deeds and the Agricultural School. And as I mentioned earlier, the online computer access fees are tumbling, and it's an area of concern going forward. That completes my agenda. I want to pause for a moment to see if any of you have any questions relative to the budget. Bill, if you would be so kind as to pull that up so we can dive into any budgets that members of the Finance Committee may have questions on.
Thank you, John. We have another document coming up, or any questions on this so far?
Right, so that's the spreadsheet, the budget, as you folks have been commonly have commonly seen in the past. Happy to toggle to any of them. It is draft. You will see, Bill, if you could click on any number of those, click on the commissioner's salary budget. There you go. You're going to see some red highlights. So what happened is, as this spreadsheet, this worksheet had to be recreated by Matt Abrahams, who is our financial consultant working with us. And you'll see, if you go through this file, I'll be happy to send it to you folks if you want to see the aggregated submission piece. A lot of working in draft formatting going on. He's tweaking titles, lines, borders, and most importantly, calculations or formulas. So don't be distracted by those colors or where you see notes. It just represents the working nature of the budget, okay? But the data within is what was submitted. And it's from this, I will start tweaking and moving the budget in the direction of a balanced budget.
Great. Okay. John, do you want us to start? Do you have any, are you open to questions if there are already?
I understand one of the members has a time issue at 6:30 now, so happy to deal with anything you got.
Okay. Joe, do you want to raise anything before you have to leave for us?
Stand by. Oh, no, I thought I was on mute. My apologies. No, I think that a lot of this is information that we were at least aware of, having gone through the budget presentation. Seeing it in this format gives some pause to the 30,000-foot view philosophy of looking at it, because we were kind of in the weeds, asking a lot of specific questions of the department heads when we had our joint meetings with the commissioners. So at this point, I don't have any questions right now. Doing a deeper dive, I think, will be helpful. There are obviously areas where we're going to need to address to create a budget that's balanced. And I have some grave concerns about the declining revenue. I think we all do, and how we address that, but no questions per se.
Okay, great. All right. Eric, Paul, how about you?
Paul, you have
No.
anything?
Do you have anything right now?
Nothing at this time.
Okay. Eric, you?
Yeah, I got a question. I mean, obviously I have a question. I always have a question. So let me ask you this. I mean, I'm a little, I guess I'm a little concerned that we're almost $1 million in the red. That's a little frightening. And I know we have some things that we got to tweak and tighten the belt and everything else. What about the $4 million in the registry that we've been talking about for the last 2 years? Couldn't any of that money be brought into the revenue side to assist us in balancing the budget?
So Eric, that's a great question. I don't have a clear answer for you, but I'll explain to you a little bit of my understanding. So the Abrahams Group clearly saw that the deeds excise balance has been sitting out there as a large chunk of revenue that can and should only be used by the Registry of Deeds. In their recommendations, they asked the Registry of Deeds to develop a plan to help spend down that balance of revenue. Last week, the commissioners wrapped up their conversation, as you know, on the various budgets, and Commissioner Stady pointed out that as we talked about the scope of all the recommendations from the Abrahams Group, there were several that were not embraced. And there were four large recommendations. And he asked that I push them back to the department heads and say, look, last call. Do you have any recommendations that you want us to embrace for FY23? And on that one specifically regarding that account for FY23, I sent an email to the register asking if there was any such plan forthcoming to the county that would help us, embrace the spend down of the funds. Unfortunately, I haven't received a response back, but I think any such plan should be in concert with the Register of Deeds. It's funding that has, as you know, very specific use associated with it. When I calculated the revenue piece, Bill, if you would be so kind as to click on the revenue tab, you'll see, Eric, that the Registry of Deeds appropriation plays with the mandated county spending and the dedicated deeds revenue.
Right.
So in a nutshell, just so you all have a refresher here, because I've been immersed in this a little bit, you have a mandated budget level that is the prior year expenditure times 2.5%.
Right.
And of course, we then add in the deeds excise, which is 40% of the deeds excise expected to be raised. We're making the registry pay for all such indirect costs, which I think are shown there at 3.755. I believe that's correct.
Yeah.
And you have to then take the difference between the mandated budget and the balance left over after the washout of the revenue. And that's where the deeds excise plays in. Right now, I'm planning for 195,757 to be that number. You'll see the number 31,687. That's last year's number. That's just a placeholder. Until I start really getting into their budget, Eric, I'm not sure that we'll see so much movement on the deeds excise. But again, that's the number that meets the mandate with the approved budget. It's the gap.
Right.
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 So whereas the register has asked for a sum of 4.135 million, and the mandate is likely to be quite lower, the deeds excise is usually the delta. I can't rationally, being on the job less than a year, give you a clear answer on a plan of how to spend that deeds excise. I'd really like to collaborate with the registry to find out what is the best sensible way to do that, and if there is simply an interest in doing it. I do recall meeting with the register when I first started. That was back in the summer, and he indicated that fund he thought of as sort of an insurance against natural disaster or something befalling the registry. It was almost like a savings account of some sort. So
Like almost like a stabilization account.
I guess, and I understand that. We had a polite conversation about that. But if there's an interest from the advisory board / finance committee to see that number decrease, again, my professional opinion is it's best that it's a collaboration. I don't want to cook up something that says, here, do this. It really works that way. So
No, I agree with you,
good
John.
question. I'm afraid I don't have a great answer for you, but that's how I understand the paradigm.
No, I agree with you, John. I think that my concern is that if the Abrahams Group came back and said that any of that money should be used for registry purposes, then if he's asking for a $375,000 increase in his budget, then let him take it out of that account and reduce our obligation. There's 375,000 off your 933,000. I know that's a very straight line calculation and there's more to it, but I'm looking at it saying if he's got $4 million, look, the registry doesn't need a stabilization fund. We all know that. A rainy day fund for the registry is a little redundant because the county has its own. So, asking him to take a $500,000 hit out of that account that's holding $4 million doesn't seem like heavy lifting to me. I realize that could end up being another fight in the long run, but I wanted to just throw out that it seems like they're using it as a stabilization, even though they're not allowed to have a stabilization on their own. A department can't have their own stabilization fund. So
Correct.
that's why I'm looking at, and I agree with you, John. I think it should be collaborative, and I think it should be, I guess, considering the history in the last year, it should be, something we can all agree on. I don't see any reason why the register wouldn't agree to something like that. But again, That's just my opinion. So I'm just thinking that we can wipe out a quarter, well, a third of this variance just in that one spot.
Eric,
Yeah.
the challenge with that notion, and there's no answer to this point, but the challenge with that notion is with a certain level of mandated funding, any number above that would be funded with deeds excise. And in this case, the finance committee and the advisory board have to reckon with, if you have an idea, Eric, to spend more than the mandated amount, say $1 million in FY23, I'm sure the register could come up with a plan to do that, and it would probably have some number of new hires associated with it. But is that the goal? Do you want the expansion of operations to spend down the deeds excise? Because
No,
you really,
yeah.
as you know, Eric, you can't just simply take $1 million out of deeds excise and add it to the mandate. It doesn't work that way.
Right. No, I get that. I'm trying to figure out if there's a way, we know that the online registry fees, like you said, I mean, with $600,000 in the negative from 5 years ago, I think there may be some opportunities to fix that potentially. So using some of that 4 million to at least bring us in line this year and possibly next year to be able to fix that problem could be part of the answer. I'm not saying it's completely, but I prepare taxes for a living, and one of the things that I do is the software I use requires me to pay prior to printing or submitting taxes to the IRS. I can't even print them off unless I pay a fee to do it. So I don't know if maybe the registry needs to look into something like that to try to counteract their online fee issue. I understand the fact that, they have the situation where people can transfer things into PDF. It's not a hard process to do. I've done it myself. I actually have done it with a deed myself. So I understand his plight when it comes to that, but there's got to be a technological way to fix that. I just don't know what the answer is, but maybe if we can.
Well, but Eric, I can inform you that we're aware that the Plymouth County Register of Deeds has a dominant watermark on their product, and their online fee account resembles the level of collections that we saw back in 2013. So it may be a choice of whether or not the image should have a more dominant watermark, because the banks will not accept that, and it'll move the consumer to then ask for the certified copy without the watermark.
Exactly.
But it's an operational choice that is beyond my reach. Obviously, the register is an elected official. The decisions on how to prepare those documents, I think, are his.
No, I agree. All right. Thank you very much for all the help.
My pleasure. Thanks for the questions.
John, can you just, one of the questions that might come up after the audit and based on prior decisions at the advisory board, which are to base the budget on prior expenditures, not on budgeted requests. Can you just show up, I'm assuming that we are still using that plan this year, and I just wanted to be sure about that with the different positions and the different budgeting the baseline budget.
Sure. So I don't have an image to show you, Dr. Childs, but Bill, if you could scroll down to the registry summary page. Further down.
We're basing it based on actuals, not projections, basically. That's what I'm saying, right?
That's right.
Okay.
So if you could increase that just a little bit, thanks. There we go. And excellent. Okay.
Thank you, Bill.
All of us trying to read here.
Through you, is magnifying glasses, they're capital expenses.
We
right?
figure out who's near side and who's south side at
Oh,
a time like this, right?
So Dr. Childs, to your point, the mandated funding for FY 23 is shown to be 3.755251. And I believe the register got that by taking the FY 21 budget and increasing it by 1.025%. I do plan to follow the rubric set by the advisory board and reach into the FY22 expenditure number. Modeling has been underway, and what I plan to do is to take the FY22 spending and extrapolate what the 22 spending will look like and apply the 1.025 to it. So I will not be using the prior year appropriation. I will stick to the rubric that I believe your board and the advisory board endorsed.
Okay,
And you, as you pointed out, the auditor had issue with that action by the advisory board. There was a peer review of that opinion that concluded that audit opinion itself was inaccurate and improper. So we have sort of a difference of opinion, but we also have, speaking of opinions, legal opinions from our counsel that said that the advisory board, through its authority in general law, does have the authority to increase, decrease, or revise appropriation. So I feel very comfortable that the actions taken were proper, notwithstanding the auditor's opinion. And I will follow that until I'm told otherwise. So we'll be basing it on the prior year, in this case, fiscal year 22 expenditure.
terrific. Thank you
I
so
would
much.
Totally agree with you on that, John. And I've reviewed the MGL myself, and it definitely, there's no question in my mind that it specifically says expenditure and not prior year appropriation. So I think we're on solid legal ground as far as using that number. And I think that will make a big difference in the registry budget. But I would agree with your assessment of that, John.
And my one question, I have one more question, John, about the registry is requesting 4 new positions. But I was actually looking, the only other place that looks to me like it has a new, 2 other positions is 1 position in the commissioner's office for the new HR specialist
Yes.
and 1 position in the engineering department for the new survey crew chief. So the whole county is talking about 2 positions, except for the registry's talking about 4 positions.
Correct. And I just want to call attention to the position within the commissioner's office for the HR specialist. In FY22, the budget included Dale Kurtz and his assistant. Those 2 FTEs are gone. His assistant, I don't believe, was full-time.
No.
But yeah, so adding
And
one.
Dale is mine now.
Yeah, that's right. So it's basically a net, it's not a net increase of 1, it's a wash, Beth,
Okay,
in the commissioner's office. But yes, the additional positions requested are, as you said, in both of those departments.
okay, so the FTE count in the commissioner's office is not changing.
Correct.
Even, right, because we took out those positions. So really, the rest of the county would be in this budget proposing to add 1 new position. The registry is proposing to add 4.
Yes. Bill, if you could open up the registry salary page, please. I'll show you where I came to 4.
John, real quick, the 4 positions that the registry is looking for, is one of them the IT director position that we've been hotly contesting for the last 6 months?
No, it's not. The CIO position has been funded for many years, Eric.
Yeah.
And it will be funded in the FY23 budget.
Right.
I believe at the top under the non-union section, line 14, it shows as executive administrator, but I believe in the register's budget, it says IT network administrator. That position is $87,000 in new funding for FY23. So I see that as 1 new position. Scrolling down under the union positions, there are 3. These are the ones the register spoke about. The head administrative clerk, there are 3 of them right in the middle, line 30, 6, 7, and 8. Those 3 are new. And also I understand on line 55, there's a pending position there. That position, I shouldn't call it new. Maybe I could amend this, but that particular position has had a vacancy, Mr. Yushevich, I believe, left in October of 2020. So that position is not new, but it's vacant. So in addition to the three I just mentioned, there's at least that one vacancy.
Are there other vacancies, John, in the budget, in the registry right now? There are some vacant positions besides.
There may be, Doctor, forgive me for not having that information clearly available. I've not taken the deep dive into this payroll yet to see it. If that might be something I can report back to you on April 6th about, but
Okay.
what we typically do with all of our salary budgets, we go line by line to make sure that the grade and the step and the proposed effective date for any steps are accurate. So, and the wages, of course. We'll go through the registry budget too. We'll assess every single position to determine if the presentation of what we have here is accurate, and we'll call out any vacancies that may exist. But
Okay.
I don't have that like at the top of my fingers right now.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I have to go mobile.
Okay, thank you, Paul.
Well, I'll be on the phone in a minute.
All righty.
Thanks.
Can I ask you just one more question, John, about the salary position, the positions things? When we did the Abraham's report, there were some comparisons with, they did a comparison with some of the other registries around manpower and staffing. And I wondered, it might be useful if the recommendation if we're asked to actually support a budget that would increase salaried positions, to actually have some benchmark differences in the different registries with the staff numbers, the FTE numbers.
Okay, yeah.
Because I think we have that information. And it's relatively new. I mean, it's very recent. So I think that's
Yeah,
useful for people
I
to
think
see
I
a
understand what you mean.
comparison.
In other words, establish some kind of a comparative benchmark or
Yeah.
ratio of staffing for an organization the size of the Norfolk County Registry to the others, so to speak. Yeah.
Right, exactly, because I think there's a real question here about the number of FTEs needed.
I'll definitely look into that for you. Thank you, Dr. Chalice.
All right, that's great. Okay, other questions? Eric, I know Paul's getting on the switching from the computer to the phone.
No, I'm good for right now. I mean, I see what the registry's doing. It looks like they're really adding, even though we're talking about 4 positions, it looks like they're actually adding 3 new positions. And one position is almost a replace of what they had in 2020. Because there's already compensation on 6/30/2020 for that non-union position. And now they're like replacing it. So it's not really a new position. It's a replacement, I guess you'd say. These 3 head administrative clerks are actually new positions. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, well, I'm struck that I think 2 or 3 budgets ago, there were 8 positions, vacant positions that were taken out of the budget.
Yeah.
And now we're putting back in 4. I mean,
Well,
I think, yeah.
I think the big thing we need to look at is that, the fact that his revenues are falling off because of online issues, and he wants to increase expenses, I mean, that right there, that causes a mismatch that we've got to try to figure out.
Right,
And if he's not willing to play ball somewhere, as far as making up that difference somewhere, somehow,
mhm,
then I don't know how we can support, a $200,000 or a $395,000 increase in his budget when
right,
we've got a $400,000 increase in that. We're going to create a structural deficit in the registry, which I know is almost impossible. I'm just throwing that out there, but
Yeah.
you got to be able to sustain it.
right. Yeah, well, that's a very good point, Eric. I'm just wondering, and I just, John, and if you think this is a bad idea, I'm totally open to hearing you say that. And Eric, what you think? Do you think it would be worthwhile the Finance Committee could make a recommendation in the budget that request or recommendation to the commissioners that that prior to the FY24 budget, that we do see a plan that's developed jointly with the register around how to spend down that $4.5 million? I mean, obviously that's, the plan may not happen before the FY23 budget. I don't know, that timing might not be realistic, but I would think that we might be able to incorporate that into our recommendation somehow, because it seems to make a lot of difference in terms of available dollars to work with here. That takes away our flexibility to have that money sitting in a place that that we can't use in a sustainable way, or, you know, in a better way.
Dr. Childs, could I make a recommendation on that?
Please, I would, that's why I raised it as a question, really.
In my experience, that type of step is quite logical. We see it a lot at the legislative level, where they will projecting influence on the executive branch to conduct studies or evaluate consolidation savings, whatever. In this case, the register is an independent elected official. I think it would make great sense for him to hear directly from the Finance Committee of the Advisory Board on this matter. Perhaps ask for a separate meeting or discussion to find out what are these options? How creative can the registry be? That collaborative, I go back to that, Eric, that comment we made earlier, that collaboration to me is how things get done. It's more difficult, I think, when you beset somebody with a task without having the opportunity to buy in and explain some of the challenges that could be in front of us that I don't see. And the register's got 20 years of experience, running that operation, and more as a commissioner. I'm sure he's got a breadth of ideas. And I would encourage a separate meeting between the register and you folks to suss that out. You have several weeks before we land on a final budget. And if you are interested in that kind of a program for FY24, I think that conversation should probably start now. But that's just my recommendation. And if you don't want to have that conversation, I'll be happy to speak to him. But in my experience, I think it's a great one-on-one approach. It's problem solving. It's what taxpayers expect of public servants and public officials. So that's my recommendation.
Well,
Okay, that's very helpful. John, Eric, what do you think about that idea?
I would suggest, Madam Chair, that I like that idea. I think the Finance Committee should meet with the registrar to talk to him about that 4.5 million, because for two reasons. One is, I think we need to be fiscally responsible, and we need to show the advisory board that we're being fiscally responsible. But at the same time, thinking about the politics around it, I don't, as much as John, I have full and complete confidence in your abilities. I don't want to create an issue between you and the registrar on this. So it's better, in my opinion, it's better if we comes from the Finance Committee. It kind of lets John off the hook a little bit, that we're asking the question.
Mm-hmm.
And then John can then have a civil conversation with the registrar to talk about it as well. And I'm not making any assumptions here. I mean,
No.
I just think that having our committee sit with the registrar and say, this is what we'd like to do, explain to us why we should or should not do this, might be a little easier on the ears than everybody else.
Okay, all right. All right, that sounds like a really good strategy to try to get at this, because I think 4.5 million sitting somewhere is not really doing the work for the county in the way that it could do. And that's really the issue. It takes away a level of flexibility.
Right, unless it's there for a particular reason.
Unless it's there for a reason.
And then that's fine to tell us what the reason is, so we don't have to touch it.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
I agree.
All right.
So Beth, are you going to be able?
Yes, Paul, what do you
be able
think?
to set that meeting up?
I was just going to say I should
fully
do that, right?
supportive,
I'll
and I
talk to
think it's
Joe.
up to you to set up the meeting. I think it's up to you to set up a meeting as soon as possible and let the Finance Committee go there.
Okay. All right. You're all right
We'll
with
go to
that,
his
Paul,
office.
if I do that?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I'll check with Joe, make sure he's he doesn't have any opinions about that that are different, and we'll go for it. Okay.
And Carl.
And Carl, yes, Carl too. Yeah. All right. And for you guys, we may just have to do it on the register schedule. I just don't know how else to do it. Is that all right with you?
we'll make it work.
Okay, all right.
We just made graduation work, right?
Yeah, we did. I'm so excited. Yes, it's gonna be awesome. All right. Yeah. Let's hear the Coast Guard band. That's what I'm looking forward to. Yeah. All right.
Chairman
Go
Chow,
on, assuming
assuming you folks are winding down, and before we lose anyone else,
yes.
if anyone has a request for the documents that you saw tonight, I'll be happy to share them. I don't want to drown out your inbox, but let me know, and I'll be happy to advance them. But I want to be mindful that you're about to see multiple versions of a budget over the next several weeks.
Oh, yeah.
I'm here to serve, you know what I mean? So,
Does anybody
Thanks,
want this
Sean.
draft of these numbers, or do you feel like you're okay to wait for the next more finished draft?
I'm good.
You don't need them. I
I'm
don't need
good.
them either, John.
Yeah.
I'm happy to wait for if I get too many, I don't know which one I'm supposed to look at.
that's an issue. Yeah, absolutely.
And
right,
Bill
that's
likes
great.
to forward them all to us. He does a good job at it.
I know.
Yeah, Bill's, yeah,
I
excellent.
am the consummate paper pusher.
Yeah.
You are.
Bill,
Yeah,
we
but you got a lot
need
of
it.
paper this afternoon. You got to digest now.
Okay, now we have a whole host. Is that it for the budget? If so, we need to approve our minutes and then I think we can adjourn. Is there anything else, John, from your perspective here?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
Oh, huh?
Bill, anything else let's see, I didn't miss anything on the agenda, did I? No. Okay,
You're all
we're just
set.
gonna do minutes, right?
Yep.
Minutes and
Okay.
future meetings.
Minutes and future meetings. Okay. Minutes. Let's do the minutes of,
My time.
do we need to do these all separately?
No,
I think
Dr.
we
Jones.
should because I think we should do them separately, Dr. Charles, because I, for one, was not at two of those meetings.
Okay, fair enough. We'll do it separately. Okay, so I'm looking for a motion for the minutes of the open meeting of 12/15/21.
So moved.
I'll move, second that.
Thank you. All in favor? I guess we'll do a roll call. Eric,
Aye.
Paul,
Aye.
the chair votes aye. Okay. The minutes of the open meeting of 1/19/22. I need a motion.
So moved.
Thanks, Eric. Second.
I was not present.
I'll second it. Okay, all those in favor, Eric,
Aye.
Paul,
Same.
the chair votes aye.
Yeah, but I'm sorry, point of order, just to make sure.
Oh,
that
right.
We don't have a quorum to vote those particular
Yep,
minutes.
we'll have to, you're right. Thank you, Eric. We
Well,
need three
John,
votes.
do we need to have a quorum of the members present for?
I would
minutes?
recommend that, Eric, yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
let's,
I would,
thank
yeah.
you, Eric.
Right,
Yes,
so we'll
let's
table
put those off.
119.
Table 119.
So I'll make.
through
the
you,
motion
Madam
to
Chair.
table 119.
Yep,
Through you, Madam Chair, a member does not have to be present for the meeting to approve the minutes.
That's what I thought. I wasn't sure. So we can actually do a 2-to-1, a 2 vote. No, well, the problem is we only have 3 people on right now. We don't have a quorum.
No,
For this,
we
I
have-
think what
we do
Bill is
have a
saying, I
quorum.
don't have to be, I didn't have to be present at the meeting to vote for the meeting minutes.
right,
That's correct.
right, okay. Then we're
we do
good
have
to
a
go.
quorum.
Yeah, then we're good to
Yeah.
go.
And I'll vote for them.
Okay, thank you, Paul. So it is a
I
unanimous.
have,
vote.
I have read them. I have them in my hand. I have read them.
Beautiful. Paul, that's excellent. Okay,
That's all you're attesting to.
all right. All right, the
You
minutes.
got it.
All right, the minutes of 2/23/22. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Okay,
Second.
thank you. All in favor, Eric,
Aye,
Paul,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. Okay, the minutes of 3/2/22. Could I have a motion, please?
motion,
Okay, second,
Again, for the record, I was not present.
okay. I'll second those. And for the vote, Eric,
aye,
Paul,
I have them in my hand. I have read them. I vote aye.
thank you, and the chair votes aye. Okay, the minutes of the open meeting of 3/9/22.
so moved.
So move.
Second, thank you. All in favor, Eric,
Aye,
Paul,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. Okay, that is it. Bill, did I miss any of them? No, I don't think so.
Did not, Madam Chair.
Okay, we got them. Okay.
you are amazing. You're the
How about,
best.
Beth, how about future meetings?
Future meetings.
Future meetings.
So our next meeting is the meeting of April 6th. at 6 o'clock. Correct? Is that what, Bill, what you have and John, what you have?
4:30.
That's
What's
on.
that?
No, we were just discussing another meeting. Yes, you're on for 6 o'clock on April 6th.
Okay, and then the next meeting would be, well, that we're actually scheduled for, I believe, is May 11th, correct?
Madam Chair, don't forget, you have an advisory board meeting on the 13th.
Yes, that's right. We have an advisory board meeting on the 13th at 6. Yes.
Believe
13th of
that.
April, right?
Can
Yes,
you repeat that, Eric?
For the 13th of April.
yes.
That's right, and it will be held at the
Yeah, yeah.
agricultural school.
That's at
Okay.
the Aggie, okay. All righty. That's okay,
And then after that, it's May 11th
okay.
At 4.
at 4, and then an advisory board at 6.
At the Aggie also?
Yes, sir.
Those are both at the Aggie? Okay. All right. So
Is the FinCom at the Aggie?
yes, let's do that. Let's do the FinCom at the Aggie. Oh, can we do that, John?
We'll have to check with the agricultural school
Yes.
on the logistics at 4 o'clock, but we were given a green light for the 6 o'clock version.
Okay,
So
I'm sure it'll work out.
You mean
yeah,
we're gonna
this is small.
actually have in-person meetings? I'm so excited.
yeah, we're gonna have in-person meetings. It's gonna be
I
awesome.
know, huh?
Whoopee. No dinner, though.
I was just gonna ask if there's cornbread.
No,
Will refreshments
Hey.
be sold or provided?
And then do we have the meetings? Do we have meetings in June then, John, too, I think? Only if we need them?
We are, 1 second.
I had them in my book, but that might be wrong.
May 18th.
No, May 18th is no longer in play. I didn't bring my calendar for June.
That's okay. That's okay. We'll figure that out.
I believe we-
think-
Dr. Childs, I believe we did do a June meeting for the capital piece, so.
That's right. Okay. And I had that down as, I'll tell you what I have in my book, and I had down June 1 at 6 o'clock for a finance committee meeting for capital.
I didn't have that, but I have the June meeting for capital on the budget vote, capital budget vote on the 8th.
On the 8th. Then I had the following week for the.
Right. But the goal is to have the
whole board.
operating budget completed on May 11th.
Yes. So this is all capital in June.
Capital budget for June 8th.
For
What
June
I
8th
had.
is the Norfolk, is the whole advisory board.
I'll
Right.
send out an updated schedule this week, once I amend the May 11th date. I'll send it to the whole,
Okay,
I'll have Bill send it out to the whole group. All right?
okay. All right, that's great. That's good. I think, and we can figure that out if we need to change that. Okay. All right. Anything else, gentlemen?
No, thank you all.
All
Motion
right,
to adjourn, your favorite words.
please, a motion to adjourn.
I made it.
Excellent. Thank you, Paul. Will you second that, Eric? I think we have to, do we have to vote this too?
Eric doesn't want to leave.
Parliamentarians, Eric, you're muted, I think.
thank you.
Yeah, I know. I don't have any problem with that at all, you know, and, you know, I do have a life. It might not be exciting, but definitely not as exciting as Dr. Childs, you know, going all over the place, you know.
Oh, well, we'll see. Wait till I go to the ball. I have to go to the formal ball. There's got to be an exciting event.
Hey, here's this thing I can say that I can honestly say that you will be the belle of the ball. I say that all the time, but you will definitely be the belle of the ball.
Oh, I've got my dress and everything. I'm all ready. All right. Okay, so.
All
I
in
guess we
favor,
should vote
all in
this.
favor, aye.
I
Aye. Okay, the meeting is adjourned